I'm Ron Strickland. This webcast is one of a series in which I'm providing some brief lectures and commentaries on topics from the courses I teach in literature and cultural studies. This particular installment is one of three in which I'm looking at the prologue to the Wife of Bath's tale from Chaucer's Canterbury Tales, and discussing the Wife of Bath's debate with the patriarchal order of Christian tradition and the Roman Catholic clergy, and her representation of her experience with men in her 5 marriages. In this webcast, we'll be looking at what she says about her relationships with her first 4 husbands. It occurs to me to preface my discussion of the Wife of Bath's account of her experience in marriage at this particular historical moment by acknowledging that it's a piece of literature that's fraught with some danger because it involves domestic abuse. And even though things turn out okay in the end, there's a lot of joking involved in the account of husbands and wives hitting each other and behaving badly toward each other and disrespecting each other. And I hope it won't seem that in reading the Canterbury Tales and the Wife of Bath's account of her experience with her husband, that it's excusing any unacceptable behavior. Nonetheless, it is part of our history, and it's important not to ignore negative aspects of our history, and also to recognize that humans are package deals and unfinished products, and as people, one hopes that we become more humane as time progresses. Not guaranteed, but it's the hope. So I'll come back then to the Wife of Bath. There's her image from the Ellesmer manuscript. So she was first married at 12 years old to a wealthy old man, and she'd been married 5 times, and she's grown rich herself in the process. And we learn from her that she clearly enjoys sex, but she doesn't like to be controlled by men. Her name is Allison, we learn, and that suggests a connection perhaps with the Allison of the Miller's Tale, and she also mentions a friend called Allison. Her tale presents a contrasting view of romance to that of the Knight's Tale. And her prologue is structured in 2 parts. Last week we spent quite a bit of time examining her debate with clerical authority. All of those quotes from the Bible, from St. Jerome, from the things that she has heard priests say about St. Paul. And in all of these cases, the priests are focusing on texts that subordinate women to men, and texts that present women as evil or untrustworthy, as dangerous, and as unfaithful, all of these things. So she's at some pains to argue against these things, or at least to reject them. In the second part of her prologue, she's going to talk about her experience in marriage. I'll read a little bit in the modern translation. So she says, "Now, sir, now will I tell forth my tale. As ever I may drink wine or ale, I shall speak the truth. Those husbands that I had, 3 of them were good and 2 were bad. The 3 were good men and rich and old. Hardly might they the statute hold in which they were bound unto me." Remember, the statute is the debt that the husband owes his wife. She interprets that as that the husband must have sex with her so there can be reproduction. And last week, you'll recall, she asked, how is this husband going to pay his debt without using his silly instrument? And instrument may be a financial instrument, like a bond or something, or maybe a tool. "So help me God, I laugh when I think how pitifully all night I made them work, my husbands. They had given me their land and their treasure. I needed not work hard any longer to win their love or do them reverence. They loved me so well by God above that I reckon little of their love. A wise woman will be constantly busy to get their love, yes, when she has none. But since I had them wholly in my hand, since they had given me all their land, why should I take care to please them? Unless it were for my profit and my pleasure. I set them so to work by my faith that many a night they sang well away, woe is me. The bacon was not fetched for them, I believe, that some men have in Essex at Dunmore. She's referring to a fair at Dunmore where if a wife and a husband could show that they had gone for a whole year without a quarrel, they would win the prize, which was a side of bacon. I governed them so well, according to my law, that each of them were very blissful and eager to bring me gay things from the fair. They were very glad when I spoke to them pleasantly, for God knows I cruelly scolded them. Now listen how well I conducted myself. You wise wife that can understand me, thus should you speak and accuse men wrongfully. For half so boldly can no man swear and lie as a woman can. I do not say this concerning wives that are wise, unless it be when they are ill-advised. A wise wife, if she knows what is good for her, shall deceive him by swearing the bird is crazy. What bird? Well, crows were fabled to tell men when their wives were being unfaithful. Maybe an antecedent to the phrase we still use, a little birdie told me. So, I'll just swear that this bird is crazy, and I'll prove it by taking witness of my own maid, who is in league with me. But listen how I spoke. Sir, old doddering fool, is this thy doing? Why is my neighbor's wife so gay? She's honored everywhere she goes. I sit at home, I have no decent clothing. What dost thou at my neighbor's house? Is she so fair? Art thou so amorous? What do you whisper with our maid? Bless me, sir, old lecher, let thy tricks be. And if I have a close friend or an acquaintance, innocently, without guilt, you scold like a fiend. If I walk or go into his house to amuse myself, you come home as drunk as a mouse and preach on thy bench. Bad luck to you. Thou sayest to me, it is a great misfortune to wed a poor woman because of expense. And if she be rich, of high birth, then thou sayest it is a torment to put up with her pride and her angry moods. And if she be fair, thou utter knave, thou sayest that every lecher wants to have her. She cannot remain chaste for any length of time, who is assailed on every side. So she is, the wife of Bath, is describing how she goes out, visits her friend, and maybe has affairs on the side, then comes home and accuses her husband of having affairs on the side. This is kind of funny because these husbands are so old, they can barely keep her satisfied, let alone going and jumping some fence where the grass seems to be greener. If she be foul, if the wife be foul, thou sayest that she covets every man that she may see. For like a spaniel, she will on him leap until she finds some man to buy her. Thou sayest that leaky houses and also smoke and scolding wives make men to flee out of their own houses. Bless me. What ails such an old man to chide like that? Thou sayest we wives will hide our vices until we be securely tied in marriage, and then we will them show. Well, may that be a proverb of a scoundrel. Thou sayest that oxen, asses, horses, and hounds, before men them buy, spoons and stools and all such household items. And so are pots, clothes, and adornments. Everything, people can try them, examine them before they buy them. But wives are not so. Folk of wives make no trial until they are wedded. O doddering scoundrel, and then sayest thou, we will show our vices. Thou sayest also that it displeases me unless thou wilt praise my beauty, and unless thou peer always upon my face, and call me dear lady in every place, unless thou make a feast on that same day that I was born, and make me happy and gay, and unless thou do honor to my nurse, and to my chambermaid within my bedchamber, and to my father's folk and his allies, thus sayest thou, O barrel full of lies. And yet, of our apprentice Jannikin, because of his curly hair, shining like gold so fine, and because he familiarly attends me everywhere, yet hast thou caught a false suspicion. I do not want him, though thou were dead tomorrow. Why are you spying on me all the time? You're not treating me right. You think I'm fooling around with the servant. I know you're going out at night and tomcatting around. This is how you control a husband, she says, especially an old one who can barely fulfill his marital duty in bed. Thou shouldst say, wife, go where you please, enjoy yourself. I will not believe any gossip. I know you for a true wife, Dame Alice. We love no man who takes notice or concern about where we go. We will be free to do as we wish. Now, the wise astrologian, Don Ptolemy, says this proverb in his Almagest. Of all men, his wisdom is the highest, who never cares who has the world in his control. By this proverb thou shalt understand. If thou have enough, why should thou take note or care how merrily other folks fare? For certainly, old senile fool, by your leave, you shall have pudendum right enough at eve. You shall have quaint right enough at eve. You know the word quaint? Still use it in English, but in a different sense. That means what? Quaint, old-fashioned. It meant cunt. You shall have quaint right enough at eve. He is too great a miser that would refuse a man to light a candle at his lantern. He shall have nevertheless light, by God. Now let's pause for a moment and consider just what she's saying. You've got a lantern. Someone has a candle. No big deal if the person says, can I have a light? If thou have enough, thou need not complain. Gentlemen, write thus, as you have heard, I firmly swore to my old husbands, that thus they said in their drunkenness, and all was false. But I took witness, for like a horse I could bite and whinny. I could complain, and yet I was in the wrong, or else many times I had been ruined. Whoever first comes to the mill first grinds. I complained first, so was our war ended. They were very glad to excuse themselves quickly of things of which they were never guilty in their lives. Of wenches would I freely accuse them, when for sickness they could hardly stand. Yet I tickled his heart, for he believed that I had of him the greatest affection, even jealousy. I swore that all my walking out by night was to spy out wenches with whom he had intercourse. Under that pretense I had many a mirth, for all such wit is given us in our birth. Deceit, weeping, spinning God has given to women naturally, while they may live. And thus of one thing I boast, at the end I had the better in every way, by trickery or force, by some such thing, as by continual murmur or grieving or grouching, especially in bed they had misfortune. There would I scold them and do them no pleasure. I would no longer in the bed abide, if I felt his arm over my side, until he had paid the penalty to me. Then would I allow him to do his foolishness. And therefore, every man, this tale I will tell. Anyone can profit, for everything is for sale. One can lure no hawks with an empty hand. For profit, I would endure all his lust and make me a feigned appetite. And yet in bacon had I never delight. For profit I would endure all his lust and make me a feigned appetite, and yet in bacon had I never delight. Your book, I think, has a footnote on this. Front row scholars.
Like, is it innuendo or is it like what?
It's a sexual innuendo, yeah, definitely. Old meat, cured meat. His penis is like a salted piece of bacon. She doesn't have a taste for it. And yet, in bacon, I never had Delight. Now she'll put up with it once in a while because he's going to die soon and he got lots of money. With that, I'll conclude this webcast. But, as always, if you have questions or comments, please don't hesitate to send me an email. In this webcast,